Hey there everyone, it's Brendan here from the Crypto 101 team, and welcome back to another weekly crypto market update. And this week, the crypto market is kicking things off hot. In fact, hot might be an understatement for what's going on right now, and you'll see why in just a second. But at a high level, we have Bitcoin up 4.5% on the day. We have Ethereum up almost 10%, Solana up 6.5%, XRP is up about 4.5%, Maker's up 8%, AVAX is up almost 10%. And what this means is that not only is Bitcoin doing good, but the altcoin market is really starting to heat up here. And there's a lot of opportunity that I want to talk about in today's video. Now, of course, it's not just the price action. It's not just the technicals that are looking good. We're seeing a lot of really big fundamental changes and a lot of catalysts that are working behind the scenes to actually to really push up the crypto market, and that's kind of driving this news in the background. So for starters, we have Trump Media Group partnering with Crypto.com to finalize an agreement to essentially launch a bunch of more altcoin ETFs. Now, these altcoin ETFs are going to be focused on cryptos that are quote unquote made in America, which gives us a better idea of which altcoins we could expect to see get a little bit more attention here. This is something that we talked about already a little bit on the channel. Now, beyond this, we have one of the largest corporate holders of Bitcoin, someone inside the top 10 largest corporate holders of Bitcoin saying, man, we are quote unquote just getting started, and that there could be a lot of really great upside that is still coming the way of the crypto market. I also want to talk about the global M2 money supply and how that relates to the crypto market. There is a bunch of chatter about essentially, how this is going to positively impact the price of Bitcoin and altcoins alike. And if this chart has any kind of, validity to it, then we could see new all-time highs a lot sooner than I think people are expecting. We also saw CNBC come out and say that, hey, Bitcoin is officially decoupled from the NASDAQ and why this is a good thing. I want to talk a little bit more in depth about that. But then we're seeing all sorts of positive regulatory shifts on a global scale. We're going to talk about what's happening in the US, but also what's outside of the US, over the pond over in Australia and some of these other places. But essentially, there is just about everything that we could think about from a positive perspective. It's all happening right now, and there's almost no negative catalysts. And the way that crypto is decoupled from NASDAQ in the TradFi markets is probably the best case scenario. And again, we'll explain why here as we dive into everything. So first and foremost, if you're new to the channel, welcome. It's good to have you here. We make weekly crypto market updates just like this one, completely for free. So if you like the content, all that we ask is a few things. You hit the like button, you hit the subscribe button, and if you really like the content, then leave a comment in the comment section down below, and maybe check out some of those links in the description where you can get plugged into some of our great communities. So let's switch over to a screen share here, and let's just look at what's happening at a very high level, because Bitcoin is rallying, and not only is it rallying, but it's getting through some of the most important resistance levels that we could be needing to break through. So first and foremost, we have this all-time high resistance level on Bitcoin, right? We really saw Bitcoin struggle to break out of this time and time again until the last week or so. We started to see Bitcoin break through this big resistance line and go through the 20, the 50, and then eventually the 200-day moving average, and now we're pushing back above the 80s, above 90K, all the way up to around 91, 92,000, which is where the current price of Bitcoin is sitting at. So we are starting to push back up into a resistance territory in the low to mid 90s, even going up to 100K. We know that this used to be a big support area, and so now we're looking at Bitcoin saying, hey, can we break back into this range? Can we get above some of these previous support levels that have turned into resistance? And ultimately, we're just looking at this and saying a break of the downtrend in any way, a higher high on Bitcoin in any way, is a good thing for the markets, especially after this little double bottom that we saw over here. Now we are starting to see Ethereum get a really big rally. It was up almost 10% on the day. Solana's pushing 6.5% on the day. And then we're having some of these more traditional altcoins really starting to accelerate. I mean, AVAX is up 9.5%. Aerodrome's up almost 9.5%. And as I scroll through the watch list, we can just see that there's a lot of altcoins that are up about double digits on the day. We have Pepe up 10%, Radium up 10%, Sui up almost 11%, Tao's up almost 10.5%, and the list goes on. I mean, Fartcoin is, I think, back over a $1 billion market cap as it's pushing 14.5% to the upside. So lots of great things that are happening here. It's not just for Bitcoin, it's for the altcoin market as well. But there's a lot of really big fundamental catalysts that are kind of driving this move to the upside. One of the big ones that we talked on and we touched on a little bit earlier was this partnership between Trump Media and Crypto.com. And so they are finalizing their agreement to launch a slate. This means more than one, a whole handful of quote unquote made in America crypto related ETFs. Now, they don't go into depth in this article and they don't say, oh, we're looking at this coin, and this coin. But what they do say is that they want to include a unique basket of crypto related equities, Bitcoin, and, keyword here, other altcoins with a made in America focus. Now, I think that the word focus here is really, really important. It's not saying it has to be limited to only crypto projects, only crypto assets that are made in America, but it's going to be focused on those. So what could this include? Well, this could include things like Solana. This could include things like XRP. It could include some of these other made in America focused crypto projects. And we could get a better idea of what this looks like at a distant point in the future. But as of right now, again, they don't go too far in the detail. They don't let us know what specific crypto projects or assets that they're looking at. But this is something good to know, as maybe we can create a bias for what's happening here in the crypto market. Now, beyond this, we have one of the largest corporate holders of Bitcoin, Metaplanet. And we've been talking about them more and more. But with Metaplanet over here, they were saying, hey, we're just getting started. And they think that the crypto market can do a lot of more positive things. So they are one of the top 10 corporate holders of Bitcoin. They've adopted this MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor-like approach of just accumulating Bitcoin, especially on the dips. And so far, this has actually turned out to be pretty good for them. And they've made a really big name for themselves. Now, the M2 money supply is another big talking point, right? A lot of people have brought up this idea of the M2 money supply, and they said, hey, this typically leads Bitcoin by a couple of months. And if we look at this, the M2 money supply is I believe that's what the white is in this picture. Yeah. And then Bitcoin is right around the orange area. And so historically, Bitcoin does a pretty accurate job of following what the M2 money supply is doing, just with a couple months of a delayal process. So now people are looking at this and saying, well, we're actually kind of at this point where the M2 money supply is pushing off. It bottomed out a couple of months ago. It has now started to rally, and now Bitcoin is kind of following along that path. If that is the case, then we can very well see new all-time highs, not only by the end of this year or the end of the cycle, but potentially in the next couple of months. I know some people are saying, hey, it's going to be a couple of weeks. It'll probably be a little bit more time than that, truth be told. But I still think that this is something to pay attention to. Now, does it paint the entire picture? Does it take in all the data? The M2 money supply does not, but it does a good job of painting a broad picture. It gives a really good job of talking about like just a high level analysis without considering everything. So it's not the most like honed in accurate, but it is a pretty good high level indicator to be like, hey, where are we at in the market? Where should we kind of be biased towards? And I think it has it right here saying, hey, we should be long biased at a point like this. It's not all going to be pointed up and to the right, but I think that the general kind of shift in direction is happening back to the upside. Now, I want to talk about this article as well. In fact, this is a video. I'm not going to share it. I know it's about 2 minutes long. Maybe we'll talk about it over on the Crypto 101 channel tomorrow during our crypto rundown, and we'll probably watch the clip over there if you want to go check it out. But CNBC just came out and they just flat out said, Bitcoin is obviously decoupled from the NASDAQ, and this is a big deal, and it's happening for all of the right reasons. So if you haven't seen what's happening over here on Bitcoin compared to NASDAQ lately, what we've seen is that Bitcoin has been not only holding value, for a while it was holding value while NASDAQ and the TradFi equities were dumping. It's begun to start moving upwards, even as they were falling. So if we look at Bitcoin yesterday, it was green almost 3% on the day. And this is while NASDAQ yesterday was almost red 3%. So again, NASDAQ was almost red 3.5%, and Bitcoin was almost green 3%, right? So when we're looking at this, again, Bitcoin really is decoupling. It was holding value all last week, while NASDAQ was just dumping all of last week. So Bitcoin is really starting to stand out here. And this is a little bit shocking for people, I think, because what we had previously seen up until this point is that Bitcoin was considered to be one of the more volatile risk-on assets. Now what we're seeing is that Bitcoin is still remaining technically a risk-on asset, but it's being volatile in essentially only in the upside. What we've seen is that the sell-offs of TradFi equities is not affecting Bitcoin. The sideways choppiness is not affecting Bitcoin. And so what this means is that Bitcoin is seeing limited downside whenever they're having the red days, and it's seeing accelerated upside moves when the TradFi side is recovering. So I don't want to say only see this, but it almost does look like a scenario where it's just a win-win for Bitcoin. It's moving up on the red days, and it's moving up twice as much on the green days of the TradFi side. So regardless of what's happening over there, the selling pressure is having little to no effect on Bitcoin in the crypto market, and any kind of positive pressure that they get just bolsters the case in the volatility to the upside for the bulls. So again, I'm not saying we can't have red days, we can't move down here and there, but it does create a pretty convincing argument for the crypto market as it begins to decouple in a really good way. Now, one of the other things I think that we need to address here is just the global regulation that's happening. An Australian federal court overturns a ruling that is against a crypto lender called Block Earner. We've talked in recent weeks about how the US is making big shifts to how they're regulating the crypto market. They're becoming a lot more friendly. They're becoming a lot more positive. And they really do set the standard. The US really does set the standard when it comes to this stuff. Now we're starting to see the ripple effects overflow into other areas, and Coinbase is taking advantage of this. They are confirming that they are considering to apply for a U.S. federal bank charter. And this could really make a big move for the crypto market, especially for Coinbase, kind of saying, hey, we want to get into a bunch of different areas. I believe it was just last week we were talking about how Kraken was trying to offer crypto-related equities and stocks and other TradFi products beyond just cryptocurrencies specifically. And now we're starting to see Coinbase and Robinhood and a lot of these other players really start to expand their footprint so that users can get access to anything from a single place. Because what we see is that, again, a lot of these TradFi brokerages, they don't give you access to most cryptocurrencies. Maybe you can get access to Bitcoin, maybe a few others, but what these crypto companies are doing are saying, why can't you just do everything from a single place? Why can't you do stocks, bonds, futures, equities, cash, savings accounts, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, altcoins? Why can't you just do everything from a single place? And to be honest, I'm all for that. I think that if we can do something from a single place, it allows us to ease the barrier for the people who do want to get plugged into crypto to actually get access to it alongside other crypto-related assets. So there is really just a lot of positive stuff that's happening here. I think that's why we're seeing such a sharp move to the upside. But now what we're seeing is Bitcoin is coming back into a bit of a resistance zone. We'll have to see how this kind of continues. I'm assuming we probably get some choppiness. Maybe we get a little bit of downs, followed by some more ups. But I think that the big picture is painting up and to the right and in the long term. And we like to see Bitcoin kind of break this downtrend that it was in. So thank you all for watching. If you did like this video, again, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. We got free weekly crypto market updates just like this one coming out every single week on Tuesdays. So again, if you like this, stick around for some more content. Now, if you're new here and this is your first time and you want to get plugged into a really great crypto community, then you can go over to the link in our description down below and you can join us at a couple of our different platforms. For starters, we have Crypt Nation, which is a great place to get plugged in. If you want to join a community of thousands of other like-minded individuals, you can talk about what you're interested in, trade ideas, tokenomics, you name it. Anything that's crypto related, you can come in there and talk with other like-minded individuals about it and kind of just bounce ideas around. And of course, I'm one of the analysts over there as well. And then my good buddy Bryce Paul wrote an awesome book called The Crypto Revolution, which you can find in the description down below as well. So thank you all for joining this, and I'll see all of you at the same time, same place next week.